Hello everyone, welcome to astrologynewsreport.com. Today is June 29th, 2014.
Presenting an alternate view of world events as seen through the lens of Vedic astrology.
I'm Ron Berger.
And I'm David Anton Savage. Let's take a look at the week that was.
The Mars-Uranus pattern in the heavens delivered on its promise last week as rebels continue to seize more territory in Iraq, effectively erasing the borders with Iraq's western neighbor, Syria. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant appears to be well on its way to fulfilling its dream of setting up a new entity.
Secretary of State John Kerry was in Iraq last week, hoping that somehow a political solution could be found. He met with the top Kurdish leader in the north of the country, who told Kerry that the Sunni insurgents' advance has already created a new reality and a new Iraq.
The Assad regime has now gotten directly involved in the Iraq mess. Syrian warplanes have reportedly flown over the border into Iraq and bombed ISIL positions in border towns. Meanwhile, from the other side of Iraq, Iran has been secretly aiding Iraq's Shia government by sending drones into Iraqi airspace on surveillance missions.
The recent gains by ISIL have apparently endeared the group to its Syrian rival, the al-Nusra Front. On Wednesday, al-Nusra pledged allegiance to ISIL. Everyone in the Middle East is choosing sides in this conflict.
And it's becoming clear that the USA's foolish attempt to control the Middle East has given birth to a Frankenstein monster, obviously much worse than the dictator who we destroyed. The ISIL fighters are the blowback for the hundreds of thousands murdered by the USA's misadventure.
In a different manifestation of the planetary pattern, Uranus in Pisces is the planet of disruption in a water sign, which in the USA chart is the fourth house, the house of the country's lands. Uranus is being energized by Mars, the planet of destruction, which spells danger from water.
The middle of the country is experiencing as much as 3 times the normal rainfall for the month of June, sending rivers over their banks and producing major flooding in towns and submerging cropland in Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, South Dakota, and Nebraska.
Some locations have even broken 140-year-old rainfall records.
And in yet another manifestation of the Mars-Uranus opposition, Mars, the planet of sports and victory, in a powerful relationship with Uranus, the planet of surprises, gave the world some powerfully tense and dramatic soccer games over the past week.
Like last Sunday's match between USA and Portugal, which included a last-second goal to tie the game just when the USA thought it had it in the bag.
And then we had the USA versus Germany, which was also pretty tense.
Yes, indeed.
Mercury Retrograde is the planet of facts, thinking, and ideas, retracing its steps in the zodiac, indicating rethinking previously held ideology. In a recent poll, 75% of Americans say the Iraq War was not worth the costs.
When it is in retrograde motion, a planet is being held back from making normal progress in the heavens. Mercury is the planet of communications and the media. There were 2 decisions by the Supremes last week, both of which affected the communications and media sector.
The first was a unanimous decision that forbade police from searching an arrested suspect's cell phone for information without first obtaining a warrant from a judge. This could be termed a victory for privacy or a victory for holding back incriminating evidence, depending on whether you are innocent or guilty.
The Supremes reasoned that privacy interests outweigh convenience for the police. So Americans still have privacy rights despite all the Snowden revelations?
Well, yes, but note that nothing was said about the NSA's right to listen in and collect your personal information. It's only your local police who are hampered by this.
The second ruling was against Aereo, the media streaming service that retransmits a TV show from your TV to your computer, tablet, smartphone, or other digital device. It was a victory for the TV networks who wanted to be paid when their shows were used in this manner, even if the customer had already essentially bought the program by receiving it into their TV set.
And in yet another ruling last week related to communications, the Supremes struck down a Massachusetts law abolishing the 35-foot buffer zone around abortion clinics, which was meant to keep anti-abortion protesters away from a clinic's doors.
Mercury is the planet of speech, and it was in the interests of protecting the right of free speech that the court made its decision. But this ruling has wider implications. The buffer zone theory has been used by governmental and non-governmental bodies in all sorts of ways, especially to keep protesters away from state capitol buildings when unpopular laws were being passed within, or from demonstrating outside political conventions, protests against visiting dictators, etc., etc.
So, although it is a loss for the abortion clinics, it could turn into a win for protesters using free speech in many other ways.
Mercury is the planet of signing, therefore contracts, commitments, etc. When Mercury is retrograde, signing can lead to problems down the road.
The very same trade deal that former Ukraine President Yanukovych turned down, which sparked violent street battles and ended with his ouster, has been signed by his successor Petro Poroshenko. The deal sets up a free trade zone for Ukraine and the EU, tilting Ukraine towards Europe and away from Russia.
Interesting, too, that this was done on a new moon. A new beginning for Ukraine, but this agreement is weakened by the condition of Mercury, and therefore potentious for future consequences.
Mercury is the planet of the media. When it is retrograde, media stories can be misleading. A story about a Mississippi girl with facial scars who was supposedly asked to leave a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant due to upsetting other customers by her appearance.
And whose parents have received over $100,000 in donations as a consequence, has turned out to be a hoax. Because, after examining the store video recordings, an investigator could find no corroborating evidence.
And here's an announcement. We are now on Twitter. So you can join the conversation, make suggestions for subjects we can cover, get daily updates, and so on. Follow us on Twitter at Astro News Report.
And so we conclude this week's review of the week. And be sure to click in with us next week.